Imagine embarking on an extraordinary space journey, leaving Earth behind to traverse to another planet, a voyage spanning 120 years. You'd spend this entire duration in a deep slumber, but what if something went awry, waking you prematurely to find yourself utterly alone aboard the vast spaceship? How would you react? Well, that's precisely the predicament our protagonist faces, and if you're curious about his ordeal, stay with us until the very end. Our narrative commences in the cosmic expanse aboard the spaceship Avalon, destined for a new world named Homestead. This vessel carries a complement of astronauts and 5,000 passengers, all suspended in hibernation, a state that pauses their vital functions within individual pods until their scheduled awakening 120 years later upon reaching their destination. As the spaceship navigates an asteroid field, several malfunctions occur. Although designed for automatic self-repair, most issues resolve save for a critical failure in the hibernation pod of a man named James. At that instant, James's hibernation ceases and his pod opens. He awakens to a pre-recorded message, initially believing he's arrived at Homestead. He rises, proceeds to his quarters, and prepares to greet his fellow travelers, only to be bewildered by their absence. He begins to explore the ship, seeking clues to understand the situation. He discovers the immense scale of the vessel, akin to a mobile metropolis equipped with cutting-edge technology. Eventually, he locates a guidance system and inquires about the ship's command personnel. Upon reaching the ship's control center, he finds it deserted. It's then he learns the location of the captain and crew quarters and heads there for answers, but the door remains locked, access denied to someone of his passenger class. He's startled to realize the ship is operating on autopilot with no crew present. At this juncture, he opts to use the ship's technology to inquire about their voyage. He uncovers that 90 years and several weeks still remain before their arrival at Homestead, and they departed Earth approximately 30 years prior. It's then that the gravity of his situation dawns on him. He's awakened far too early. He attempts to transmit a message to the company managing the journey based on Earth. In his message, he details his malfunctioning hibernation pod and his premature awakening. However, upon sending, he learns the message will take 19 years just to reach its destination, with a reply expected in 55 years. He resumes his solitary wandering through the ship until he encounters a bartender at a bar. Surprised to see another soul, he approaches, only to discover it's merely a robot named Arthur. At this point, all hope of finding other human contact dissipates, and the robot becomes his sole companion. The next day, he goes for breakfast, only to find that his passenger class is restricted to a specific meal, compelling him to consume the same fare daily. Undeterred, as a mechanical engineer, he attempts to repair his hibernation pod, but his efforts fail, and he becomes momentarily trapped inside until he narrowly escapes. Next, he endeavors to access the pilot and crew quarters, but every attempt proves futile. Months drift by, day after day, with Arthur the robot as his only conversational partner. He begins to confide in the robot about his struggles. Arthur wisely advises him to embrace his circumstances if he cannot alter them. Consequently, James resolves to heed this counsel and illicitly enters a gold-class passenger suite, forsaking his modest cabin. He starts indulging in all the recreational activities available on the ship, striving to enjoy himself. He plays basketball, dances, and dines at the ship's various restaurants, but consumed by depression, he neglects his personal hygiene and the cleanliness of his surroundings. He ceases to care about anything, living in isolation. An entire year unfolds in this manner, and he continues to drink, his hope for life having vanished. One day, he stumbles upon a space suit that permits him to venture outside and experience the true vacuum of space. Secured by a safety tether, he eagerly dons the suit, reveling in the breathtaking cosmic vista. But then, a dark thought takes hold. He contemplates ending his life. He's on the verge of opening the hatch without the suit, but at the absolute last moment, he recoils, collapsing in tears. In that vulnerable state, he finds himself beside a hibernation pod containing a woman named Aurora. He's instantly captivated and quickly accesses the passenger manifest to learn more. He watches her video where she explains her motivation for joining the voyage, a writer and journalist seeking a unique adventure to enrich her writing. James dedicates all his time to sitting by her pod, observing her videos as if sharing a life with her. Eventually, the desire to truly share his life with her grows, and the notion of waking her from hibernation begins to take root in his mind. Yet, he resists, understanding that such an act would irrevocably alter her future. With no one to truly confide in but Arthur, he attempts to express his profound distress to the robot, but it offers little solace. He laments to Arthur that he's merely a machine, incapable of comprehending his human anguish, and that he desperately needs genuine human connection. Still, he grapples with the decision to awaken her. The next morning at breakfast, Aurora is astonished by the meager food he's consumed for a year. Being a gold-class passenger, she procures him a superior meal. She begins to propose various solutions to their predicament, but he informs her he's already exhausted every option she suggests, to no avail. Still, she remains undeterred, revisiting every step he once attempted. Eventually, she decides to write the book she had intended to compose on Homestead, but instead of chronicling a new life there, she writes about her unexpected journey. She establishes a daily routine and ultimately chooses to document James's experiences during the voyage and his initial reasons for embarking. He reveals he's a mechanical engineer seeking to forge a new existence in an unexplored world, a life built on his own terms. From that moment, their bond deepens and their conversations lengthen. He discovers she had purchased a round-trip ticket, planning to reside on Homestead for a year before returning to Earth to recount her extraordinary journey, thereby becoming the sole journalist with such an experience. This realization brings back the shattered dream. To alleviate her sorrow, James takes her to revisit the recreational activities he once enjoyed. Time progresses, and their intimacy grows profound, so much so that he meticulously reconstructs a renowned building from her hometown, knowing her longing for it. Later, he asks her on a date, and she accepts immediately. She confides in him about her father, also a celebrated writer who passed away when she was young. James assures her he desires to understand every facet of her life. He then takes her to experience the space suit and venture outside the ship. She's mesmerized by the celestial panorama and the sensation, and they both openly declare their mutual affection. They begin to live together, savoring their newfound life, and she continues to pen her book. He surprises her with genuine flowers, preserved on the ship for future planting on Homestead. She's overjoyed, possessing a deep love for natural flora. All proceeds smoothly until her birthday, when James presents her with an engagement ring. Witnessing their closeness, Arthur comments on their seemingly perfect compatibility. Aurora responds that no secrets exist between them, they become one. But then, Arthur inadvertently reveals that James was the one who woke her, describing his profound struggle with the decision. She's stunned and confronts James. When he doesn't deny it, she collapses, realizing he effectively ended her original life path. Each time he attempts to speak with her, she avoids him until she finally erupts, striking him to release her pent-up fury. He then uses the ship's intercom to address her, explaining his reasons, his intense suffering, and how seeing her prevented him from taking his own life. She, in a way, saved him. But she remains indifferent, telling him to stay away, blaming him for ruining her life. Following this, James begins to notice minor glitches in the ship's systems occurring sporadically, and it becomes apparent that the frequency of these malfunctions is steadily increasing, though no one else is aware. Meanwhile, Aurora starts to revisit cherished memories with the people she's lost. James, in the interim, attempts to atone in his own way. Knowing her affection for real plants, he cultivates a genuine tree directly in the ship's central area. But abruptly, a significant malfunction strikes the ship's systems. Certain functions cease, and even the elevator breaks down. It's then they hear the voice of the ship's captain inquiring about the tree. They meet him and explain everything. James has been awake for 2 years and Aurora for 1. The captain is surprised by the hibernation pod malfunctions, but possessing access to restricted areas as commander, he proceeds to investigate the ship's failures, finding no clear data. He informs them he'll inspect the hibernation pods. James observes that the captain appears unwell, but the captain dismisses it as mere side effects of awakening from hibernation. He's dismayed by the sheer number of ship issues and, after examining the pods, discovers his own pod failed due to a series of inexplicable malfunctions. As for Aurora's pod, he discerns that James was the one who activated it. However, he weakens again and opts to rest, postponing further investigation of the ship's problems until the following day. That night, another malfunction occurs. The ship momentarily loses gravity before stabilizing. James and Aurora promptly awaken the captain to relay what transpired. He realizes the problem stems from a collision with large objects, an ominous sign. He delves deeper, discovering the initial impact occurred 2 years prior, with subsequent collisions escalating since then. He also learns the main system suffered severe damage from an overload, necessitating the location and repair of the source. They deduce that the next systems likely to fail are those critical for sustaining life, placing their very existence in peril. The captain guides them to the control room, but he collapses. They rush him to the medical robot, which reveals he has only a few hours to live due to multiple organ failure caused by his pod's malfunctions. The greater shock, no treatment can help him. He's dying. He leaves them, seeking a moment of solitary contemplation. Suddenly, another malfunction strikes the ship. They search for the captain and find him donning his suit. He tells them he senses death approaching, advises them to care for each other, grants James his ID to access restricted systems and rectify the issues, and then passes away. At that precise moment, the ship's systems spiral out of control. Later, James informs Aurora of a discovery he made while fixing the ship, a hibernation function within the medical robot. It can halt all biological activity, meaning someone can re-enter hibernation. But before she expresses excitement, he reveals the catch. There's only one robot, meaning only one of them can use it. James insists she should be the one to return to hibernation, so she can awaken on Homestead and fulfill her dream. However, Aurora tells him that would mean he would remain alone, and upon her awakening, he would be gone. Instead, James proposes he gives her the ring after all repairs on the ship are complete. She accepts, choosing to stay and build a life with him rather than re-entering hibernation. 88 years later, the ship finally reaches Homestead. Upon awakening, the crew is astonished to discover abundant natural plants throughout the ship. James had transformed it into a colossal garden. Aurora had left them a recorded message along with her book, explaining every event that transpired. She conveys that instead of clinging to a distant dream, they chose to transform their immediate surroundings into that dream, building a life together filled with contentment, and that is how the movie concludes. If you enjoyed this recap, please remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.